Hello everyone, welcome. It's great to have you with us, and I am so pleased to welcome Jon Schull to our program. Jon is known for his academic background, and many who are watching this video probably know his background at the Rochester Institute of Technology. Officially, he's got a new day job now, which I'm so excited to talk about. You know, his work in academia is unrivaled, but what I'm so happy to see is that his greatest accomplishment is certainly ahead of him in the work that he's doing with the e-NABLE organization, which has grown into an incredibly passionate volunteer community that is simply providing 3D printed hands, yes, 3D printed hands, to the kids who need them. Wait till you hear about it. Thank you for joining us, Jon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, could you be doing any more noble work? I know your background's innovation. I know you teach invention, and I know the world needs it. But this is pretty special.
It is really special, but I got to say, it's not that noble when you actually learn how rewarding it is. You know, the original idea was, here's something that will not involve a great deal of work for me, that, you know, in my wildest dreams could actually make a difference in the world. So, sort of like pregnancy, you know, an hour of self-indulgence, and the next thing you know, it's your career. But to my surprise, this particular one has really taken off, and it is a noble endeavor, but it's working because for the people who do it, it is the most rewarding thing they've ever done. So there's not a lot of personal sacrifice going on here.
There isn't a lot of personal sacrifice. However, it's coming up on 2 years, right? Since this, you know, you took 20 minutes to go out and put a Google map up, and then everything else started to really take shape. But for those who aren't aware of that genesis, Jon, just share the genesis of the e-NABLE community with us.
Right. So the e-NABLE community, as you call it, or as we call it, the e-NABLE community, started about 2 years ago when I saw a YouTube video in which a South African carpenter described the fact that he had accidentally cut fingers off of his hand, and he was shocked to learn, as many people are shocked to learn, that partial hand prostheses are incredibly expensive, $5,000 to $50,000. And he teamed up with Ivan Owen, a prop maker for movies and a puppet maker, and together they collaborated between South Africa and Washington State to produce a crude 3D printed mechanical hand. And I have one here, and through the miracles of internet technology, I'm going to just grab it. And this is a newer version of the hand. This is an example of the product that our community has produced, but I think you can see that, and I think you can see that when you bend the wrist, it makes a fist. Now that basic dynamic of a wrist-operated 3D printable mechanical hand is what this South African carpenter talked about in that video, and he mentioned that he was putting the design online, and I had what I thought was a clever little idea. I had noticed that on this YouTube video, which, as you know, YouTube video comments are like the most demoralizing literary genre in the history of humanity.
But they give you a laugh.
That's right. Sometimes. In this case, there were not one but two people who said, you know, what this guy is proposing to do is really cool. I would do that. And it occurred to me that I could help them do it. I created a Google Map mashup, and I added my own comment to that YouTube video. And it said, if you have a printer and you want to help, put yourself on this map. If you need a hand, put yourself on this same map. So that was the, you know, the 1 hour of self-indulgence. It was, you know, what the startup people call a minimally viable product. It was a way of testing the hypothesis that you could organize an online community, a mutual aid society online, that could solve this problem using these emerging technologies of internet collaboration, 3D printing, and goodwill. And it turned out to be a bullseye because people started putting pins on the map. Within 6 weeks, there were 70 pins on the map. And by the way, people started calling me. This wasn't in the original plan, saying, okay, great, now what do we do? And of course, I had no idea. So I did what everyone does, is I created a Google Plus community. I got those people on it, and together we began bootstrapping a community that has grown by 1 to 5% every damn week since then, so that today we are 4,700 volunteers.
Wow.
All over the world. We've actually produced about a dozen designs, which are way beyond the original RoboHand design. And we've delivered about 1,000 hands and maybe 100 arms to children, mostly in the Western Hemisphere, but all over the world. And the thing is just taking off. It's become sort of the killer app for 3D printing. And I think many of us think that it's also the tip of an iceberg of some new way of thinking about how people can metaphorically offer helping hands in the global village, if you will.
And it is helping hands. But again, I want to just stick with my noble theme, because we can never go wrong doing something noble. You're talking about this community growing as fast as, it is weekly and daily. What is this incredible evolution and the depth of this volunteer community, Jon? What does it tell you about the power of collaboration? I mean, you're just getting started.
Right. Well, I think we've already proven that there must be tens or hundreds of thousands, maybe a few million people out there, all over the world, who, at this moment in human history, have been given tools of production and tools of perception and compassion, which were unthinkable 10 years ago and are available for free. That's a huge development in human history, right? So we can become personally connected to people with need. We can become individually ability to do miracles, like sketch objects and have them emerge as fully fledged physical objects. And we can connect those people with each other and with the machines that can generate devices that can change a life. And we've shown that that is a simple, bizarre fact of life at this particular moment in the 21st century. What we've also shown is that if you give people a chance to get on board that noble ship to the future, large numbers of them will with enthusiasm. And
how do is there any structure to the community, Jon, at all? I mean, does it get to a point for you where it becomes, not that you want to manage it, but does it become unmanageable when you have 50,000 people doing this?
Well, right now we have a tenth of 50,000, and it is unmanageable. In some sense, that's part of the beauty,
sure.
Right? And we don't want to manage it, but I'll tell you, I have the feeling right now that we're actively engaging maybe 5 or 10% of the people who join the community, saying, this is great, I want to help, just tell me what to do. It's not so easy to tell them what to do. It turns out, and you know the expression herding cats. Well, I've got one of the biggest herd of cats ever. They're really good cats. But it turns out that herding cats is hard, but it's really impossible if the cat herders are also cats.
Yeah, yeah.
We found that there are some things that volunteers can't do because it's just too bewildering. And the larger the community gets, the more amazing material there is in our archive, and the harder it is for newbies to get oriented. There are some things volunteers won't do. We're not paying them, right? So these have to be tasks that are rewarding and doable. And there are parts of this business, this operation, that aren't going to be instantly rewarding and doable, and it's not reasonable to expect people to do it for free. And there are some things they shouldn't do. We deal with children with disabilities and parents, some of whom are quite freaked out about this. And we're dealing with confidential information. And by the way, there are, in some cases, medical complications. So, I'm reaching for a lozenge. This will be edited, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
you get for living in Rochester.
Well, it's what I get for being on planes half the time telling this story. It's a perfect combination for
You're just getting started.
for
You're just
infections
getting
and
started.
laryngitis. That's
Yeah.
right. Okay. So there are some things volunteers can't do. There are some things volunteers won't do, and there are some things volunteers shouldn't do, like deal with confidential information or deal with medical issues that they're, after all, not qualified to deal with, which are always a potential ancillary to some of the cases we deal with. So, without trying to manage the community, which spawns some spontaneous initiative or another every damn week, we are trying to support, nurture, and streamline the experience for our volunteers and for our recipients. And to do that, we've now formed the e-NABLE Community Foundation, which is a Delaware not-for-profit. We're applying for 501c3 status, but listen up, we can already accept tax-deductible donations right now through our fiscal sponsor, the FAB Foundation. And the mission of the e-NABLE Community Foundation is to start doing some of the things that volunteers can't, won't, or shouldn't do, and increase the efficiency of the entire community. If we're only using 5% of our collective mind, I can point out that if we can increase the efficacy of what we're doing by 5%, we will double our already impressive output.
Absolutely.
And a collective mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Amen, especially coming from somebody from academia.
That's right.
John, is there how much of a difference is there? I've seen all the videos. I've seen these kids who use your 3D printed product from a real prosthetic and from a 3D printed hand. I know there is a difference, but it doesn't appear to be that much, is it?
Well, you can get a prosthetic hand or arm for $50,000 to $100,000.
Right. That's quite a price tag.
Well, that's right. That's right. And it is one of the wonders of the 21st century, right? It picks up on muscle contractions or even brain signals, and it allows individual finger control, and it's an amazing thing. And one difference between that hand and ours is everything I said and the price tag. On the other hand, it's heavy, it's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want a kid rolling in the dirt or going in the pool with it.
Well, you can't most of the time.
That's right. And so for children in particular who are growing, for God's sakes, a $50,000 titanium, or even in some cases a $10,000, if the insurance company doesn't buy it, device from a doctor like ours is not as appealing as a lightweight, pressed plastic, robust, free, superhero-powered hand that makes the kid look and feel like a superhero. Because actually, he is, right? Well, our hands don't try to look like normal human hands, and that was partly just an accident of our history.
Sure.
But it turns out there was one kid last summer who said, look, I have an Iron Man hand.
I saw it.
And that idea went viral. And so now we routinely give them sort of, kid-friendly superhero colors and themes. And the kids love them. And in some cases, I think they are more appropriate than the high-tech prosthetics, which have previously been available.
And they are superheroes, John. These kids have endured what they have. They're definitely superheroes. Here's a really dumb question. It costs about $20 to produce these. Yeah. I know, again, the noble component of you're giving them away for free. I don't know of a whole lot of people who wouldn't pay $30, $40, $50 to get access to that. Does that cross your mind at all? So that could lessen the burden a little bit for you guys?
It has crossed our mind. And it's an open issue. But the interesting thing is, I originally assumed that that's the way it would go. I originally assumed, this was an example of what turned out not to be in the original vision. I originally assumed that eventually the crowdsourced designs and methods that we developed would be patentable or licensable to manufacturers, and that would generate revenues to support the whole enterprise, including the ongoing philanthropic work. But the people who've been attracted to this vision made it very clear in no uncertain terms that they were not comfortable with the idea that what they wanted to do for free should end up costing things to anyone. And you gotta love it.
That's phenomenal.
And right. So for the moment, we're going the way we're going. And there are methods in this madness. We are within FDA regulations right now in producing these prosthetics, in part because they are body-powered, not myoelectric and electromechanical, and in part because we're giving them away for free as experimental devices. Mm-hmm. Once you start selling these things, there's an implicit warranty of use. There are all sorts of liability issues, and we haven't had time to work them out yet. So it turns out that and this is a really important lesson that I think the world is going to be learning, it turns out that the proprietary stance, the commercialization assumption, slows you way down.
Yeah, for sure.
The things we have done with extraordinary speed have been possible precisely because we took this let 1,000 hours bloom attitude and we were able to get away with it. The things we haven't done with surprising speed, like incorporate or get 501c3 status, is because we haven't found a way to do that, done an end run around the system. That takes as long for us as it does for anyone else.
But you mentioned lean startup. You definitely validated a hypothesis. You got out of the building and get out of the building every moment when one of those hands gets in, helps somebody change their life. So without question, you're following that model. Now, this whole point of iteration, you said since the first design, the designs have evolved and you've got tens plus of new designs. How do you make sure that the latest design is what other people are using throughout the community?
I'll give you some answers, but you should understand that the answers change
every moment.
I mean, and I've come to realize that, when I was in a conversation with a colleague, we were comparing our university here with our respective innovation organizations. Universities and established companies are all about having robust and reliable processes and plugging things into those processes, and you change those processes only when you have to. My question is not when do I have to change these processes, it's how quickly can I change these processes.
Amen. Yeah.
The answer to your question, how do we make sure we're getting the right designs out to the right people, is, first of all, there are lots of experimental designs and lots of ideas knocking around within the e-NABLE community. We're developing a pipeline process by which promising devices will, in the future, be less likely to just get lost in the haystack, which is, one of these underutilization issues that we deal with now. And they will go through a multi-stage testing process. One of the things you find is that these designs need to be tested on multiple printers. So we're just, in the coming weeks, putting in place a process by which a promising design gets tested on several different printers to make sure that when people start using them, they'll actually print successfully. And then those devices will be tested with a focus group, if you will, of a few sample clients, a few sample recipients, who are actually experienced users of these devices. And we'll get feedback, and of course each time we'll iterate as necessary. And then when it's, we think, good enough for our volunteers to be able to now begin using routinely, they get listed on our website, enablingthefuture.org, along with documentation, which must be in place before we list it on enablingthefuture.org. And then when people are shopping for a hand or a design or an arm, they can go there and they'll see a relatively small number of relatively well-vetted designs and documentation, which they can use to do the job. We also have another invention. So we've invented not just a number of interesting 3D printed designs, but we've also created software, which we call Hand-O-Matic. It runs in a web browser, And it allows you to take an approved e-NABLE design, plug in a few critical dimensions of the recipient's hand, and it does the scaling, the customization of this design, generates 3D printable files, and delivers them onto your computer within minutes.
Fascinating. Wow.
And so that becomes, that becomes another system for taking designs which are both vetted and suitable to this relatively simple scaling. And it means that anyone with a web browser can produce a custom 3D printable design. We created this with public libraries in mind because, as you know, public libraries are now becoming go-to places for 3D printers. So every library becomes a Handomat because they can use the Handomatic software, which is preloaded with our most user-friendly, most Handomatic appropriate designs for the masses.
John, was that software also created by the crowd?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Laird Propkin, Ro Ortiz, half a dozen other people formed a team, and we're continually improving it. And by the way, in about a year, your next computer and mine, and your phone and mine, are going to have not just the cameras we're using right now, but 3D cameras.
Yeah, I heard.
And so Handomatic 2.0 is probably going to be able to show a video of someone like me saying, okay, now do this in front of your computer. It'll say, okay, we've scanned your hand. Now here's a customized design for the shape of your hand, not just the length and the width. Now choose your model. Okay, this is what your new hand is going to look like. And these are ongoing processes. But in answer to your question, yeah, I'm proud of the fact that we've not only produced hands, we've not only produced a social ecosystem, we've also produced tools like Handomatic and like the Google Plus community that together represent a potentially new model, not just for prosthetic hands, but for crowdsourced digital humanitarianism. May even go beyond healthcare.
I mean, it's just, and I want to ask you about that in just one second. One more question about the hands. Is there anything that the 3D printed hands cannot do?
Oh yeah, let me be really clear. These are still crude devices. Right now, all of the fingers open or close in unison, right? You and I can do this, right? Our hands do this or this. Right now, the thumb is in one position, and right now it's typically in a fairly dumb position, right? So right now our mechanical hands will do this. But you know, the miracle of being an anthropoid human is that we have opposable thumbs that we can control at will. So there's, right? The arms have similar limitations on top of that. Now the good news is that those are all actually tractable problems. We do now, for example, have a hand, and it's in my briefcase, but just by doing some clever wiring, stringing, it has an adaptive grip, so that even though you only give a message of open or close, the hands will tighten, the fingers will tighten up individually to conform to the shape of whatever it is they're being asked to grip. I haven't quite figured it out, but I have a feeling there's a way to get the thumb to sort of naturally go into an appropriate position as well. But in time, there will be sensors or switches, and we will have volunteers developing hardware and software for those sensors and switches. So there's a lot to do. The exciting thing about e-NABLE and the exciting thing about our approach is that we've shown that there are tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of tech-savvy designers, tens or hundreds of thousands of people, of tech-savvy designers who are willing and able to advance the state of the art at the low end, even as, you know, the Johnsons and Johnsons of the world are advancing the state of the art at the high end.
And what that's actually the intellectual property that you're gaining is millions and millions of dollars. You can say, you know, tens of thousands of people, but millions and millions of dollars of intellectual property that you guys are putting together.
That's right. I think that's already clear. Now, it's not clear that that will ever be monetized in any obvious way, and it's not clear that we need to, but there's There's no question. I think we've already produced many millions of dollars of value, and we're going to produce even more millions of dollars of value. And since our designs are open source, we look forward to industry picking them up and turning them into products that do things that our free hands can't do. And as long as we're putting out ever better free hands, I'm confident that we're now beginning to drive down prices for commercial products, which benefits lots and lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty powerful social intervention, I have to say, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's beyond powerful. I've heard you say that you're already working on ways, you're an innovator at heart, you know, you're an inventor, to help the blind, possibly to help the deaf, possibly to help autistic kids. Can you give me a sense of what's possible with that?
Well, sure. You know, we called the organization Enabling the Future, and e-NABLE. We could have called it Helping Hands. That would have been sort of obvious, right? But we recognize that this model of crowdsourced digital humanitarianism is potentially much broader than that. Furthermore, at the going, I think it's really plausible that within 10 years, the problem of 3D printed prosthetic hands and arms isn't going to be a problem anymore. You know, and for that matter, amputation may not be a disability anymore. If these glasses didn't exist, I would be disabled. But as it is, you know, nearsightedness is not a disability. It's just a nuisance. At the rate we're going, inexpensive 3D printed prosthetics are going to be available to anyone, anywhere in, you know, within a decade or two.
Sure.
And sometime before that, and, you know, I will claim some credit for that. I think our entire community will be very proud of that. But I'm guessing that our entire community may well have gotten bored of the non-problem of 3D printed prosthetic hands within a decade, because it's going to be a solved problem. But, you know, I predict that in around that same time frame, for example, heads-up displays, Google Glass, or Microsoft's new product, or whatever comes out to pick up on that. Basically, computers on your head with cameras, with screens that add imagery to the world around you, and they can do all sorts of things. Google Glass is already out there. The point is, that's going to be a platform that is as ubiquitous and widely available as laser printers are today, as 3D printers will be in 5 years. So 10 or 15 years from now, these things are going to be commonplace, and everyone who can program a web browser is going to be able to start making applications for these devices. And here are some example applications that are going to be crowdsourceable, analogous to what we're doing with 3D printed hands. How about reading glasses if you're blind? Right? You're going to put a book up in front of your face, as the rest of us do. The camera is going to read the text. It's going to do the text-to-speech translation, and it's going to speak the text to your ear, into your ear. We call them reading glasses, but they're, you know, they're special. Or if you're deaf, you're going to be engaged in a conversation, and speech-to-text is going to do the translation and put the subtitles up while you're making eye contact with the person you're talking to. Or if you're autistic, these cameras are going to take a look at the facial expression of the person you're talking to and help you interpret what's going on. Or if you are cognitively impaired or disoriented, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, once you start thinking about what these technologies can do, and once you realize that there are 100,000 tinkerers who are looking for a good challenge, especially if it will change someone's life, you realize that we are enabling the future not just of 3D printed prosthetics, but we're enabling the future of, metaphorically, helping hands in the global village and the way people may consider themselves living and contributing to lives worth living.
Well, I don't know that you need any more proof, right? I mean, just the experiment you've done over the last 18 months is proof enough. Is there anything that concerns you about the pace by which this is going? It's going pretty damn fast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having the time of my life, but it's a roller coaster ride, and like any other roller coaster ride, you worry. And unlike any other roller coaster ride, we really could go off the rails. So currently, our situation is that we continue to grow by 1 to 5% a week. Well, when you've got 4,700 members, you can do the math. That means you've got a busload worth of newcomers every few days. We're not onboarding them as efficiently as we need to because we don't have the staff. Furthermore, as word about this gets out, expectations rise, and more people come to us with more and more requests, some of which are, for example, if someone comes to me and say, I want some of those reading glasses today, I have to tell them, look, I did a pilot 6 months ago, but right now I'm just trying to get upper limb crowdsourced prosthetic hands to work and to understand this system. So our short answer to your question is yes, coping with our continued growth in demand and in volunteers and in opportunity is a real concern. And to meet that concern, we need, I think there's no getting around it, we need to build an infrastructure and a organizational foundation that will allow us to get to better utilize the amazing army of volunteers that are saying, send me in, coach, just tell me what to do. I think we need some professional community organizers, some professional fundraisers, we need some raised funds, we need to do what we can, not to create an organization to replace what the community is doing, but to create a small, lean, mean organization that will continually be looking at ways to better catalyze this global phenomenon, which is self-organizing as fast as it can, but it's not self-organizing as fast as it's growing. And so we want to help it self-organize.
Jon, so for people, so everyone listening and or watching, how can they contribute to? Certainly, we know that there are opportunities for us to contribute time and resources if we have, but beyond that, what can we do to contribute to this movement?
Okay, so if you have a 3D printer and you want to help, go to enablingthefuture.org, get a wind of what we're doing, volunteer, it'll change your life. It's a really exciting and rewarding business. If you don't have a 3D printer and you want to help, well, actually there are volunteer activities where we need help on that have to do with organizing the community. All right, there are plenty of things to do. If you have money or you're well connected to people who have money, I'm an amateur at this. I'm an amateur at many of the things I've done, and it's working out. So, I'm not too embarrassed about it, but I'm not embarrassed to say, I don't know how to raise money for an organization like this yet. I would like help. If I had the funds to hire a fundraiser and someone to help us do that, I would do it. If I had a fundraiser who knew how to help me get the funds to hire a fundraiser, I would do it. If I had a fundraiser who said, you don't have to hire a fundraiser, I know a lot of people who would pay you to be part of something like this, just give me a call. It's not just money, though. Let me say, the reason we want this is also, we get inquiries. I got another one today. We get 2 or 3 a week from international organizations, right? The church groups in Africa or South America or Syria, or aid groups or mosques or refugee camps, and say, robust, inexpensive upper limb prosthetics are just not available, and we have tens of thousands of people who have recently lost hands or limbs because of natural disasters like the earthquake in Haiti or political disasters like Syria and West Africa. And we are desperately trying to build the organizational maturity that will allow us to be good partners to those organizations, because they recognize, and it's true, that we've created a new kind of potential solution for them. But to be responsible partners, we need to make sure that there are medical professionals at their end,
Sure.
or send them medical professionals, because the last thing we want to do is do harm. we need to make sure that we have advisors on our end who can say, yep, this is a case that you can go into confident that you'll be part of the solution, not add to the problem. And we need more expertise and understanding how to negotiate and complement governmental, non-governmental, and multilateral organizations of that sort that we're not. So we need organizational help as well.
Jon, and I just want to end by saying this. I mean, I started by asking you, is there any more noble work that you can do? And I really, from the bottom of my heart, believe, as anyone listening and or watching us, there's no more noble work that we can do than to support organizations like e-NABLE, not because of what you provide. I just think the manner by which you do it is what makes this truly unique. When you have almost 5,000 people around the world doing this for free on their own time, there's something that each of us can do to try to help move that forward. We hope that not only we can build on this, but we can contribute to your movement. So thank you for sharing this.
Thank you so much.